Next paper I'll be reading from my junior year of high school. This one is going to be a little bit further in history. This is going to be about the War of 1812, the conflict that America fought against Britain shortly after the American Revolution, but before they were largely, I guess, respected by the West as a whole. All right. Again, this is the last reading that I read, the paper about the French and Indian War. That one was a little rough, but that was my first time, I guess, revisiting it since junior year of high school. This is going to be more or less the same sort of thing here. This is my first time looking at this paper since 2022 is actually when I wrote this one. So, might be a little bit rough, but I'm not as tired as I was last paper, so it might be all right. Also, I'm sort of sitting near it's not too loud where I'm sitting near, but in the off chance that it starts to get a little bit loud, I won't know until after I'm, I guess, watching this back before I release it and post it. But that is, I guess, a concern, but it might not be that big of a deal, but we'll see. All right, and again, yeah. Well, the name of this paper is Repelling Britain, and let me start reading here. They surrounded me on every side, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. Psalm 108, verse 11. Though faced with seemingly impossible odds, the nation of the United States of America denied its surrounding enemies the chance of victory. They cut them down and defeated them. The War of 1812 was a harrowing near disaster. American shores were invaded. Her Capitol buildings were burned. The military scrambled for resources. The Emperor of France, Napoleon Bonaparte, desired control over Europe. Therefore, he conquered the countries and territories around him. He was opposed by Britain, which was the supreme naval power of the time. Their ensuing war was costly, and the two nations heavily leaned on America for transporting food, goods, and other commodities. Since neither wanted the other to gain the upper hand, they limited America's shipping abilities as a neutral nation through several acts and embargoes. Any vessels that traveled the high seas with the intent of trading with Britain would be attacked by the French, whereas any vessels traveling the seas with the intent of laying anchor in French ports could be boarded by the British. The British would even impress, seize, or kidnap American sailors. The British would also outlandishly claim that the American sailors had deserted the British Navy. They also would forcefully encroach on American land in the Western Hemisphere and dishonor established agreements and treaties. Because of their disregard for American neutrality, as well as their impertinent treatment of American sailors and policies, the British received more animosity than the French from the Americans. The acts of the British military forces provoked the Americans to go to war. Concerning the president at the time, it's noted that Madison's war message of June 1st, 1812, concentrated almost exclusively on maritime rights, noting the evidence of hostile inflexibility on the part of the British. This has often been referred to as the Second War of American Independence. On account of America standing up to British tyranny, this has often been referred to as the Second War of American Independence on account of America standing up to British tyranny. Similar to the Revolution, America faced great peril and suffered tragic losses while fighting the enemy, the worst of which was the August 24, 1814 raid on Washington, D.C. The Battle of Bladensburg and the capture of Washington City, landing with a force of more than 4,300 soldiers and sailors and Marines near Benedict, Maryland. The British march overland toward Washington, D.C. A force of poorly trained American militia and some regulars try to stop the British at Bladensburg, but are routed. Captain Joshua Barney and about 500 seamen and Marines do the only real fighting on the American side, but they are soon forced to retreat, leaving the road to Washington open. The British occupied the city and burned the public buildings, including the Capitol and the White House. Thankfully, the president's wife, Dolly Madison, managed to save valuables and priceless paintings before the British arrived. But this was undoubtedly one of the worst defeats of the war. One of the brightest moments of the war was the birth of the song Star-Spangled Banner, which was originally penned as a poem by Battle of Baltimore veteran Francis Scott Key. It was granted its infamous spot as the American national anthem on March 3rd, 1931. Another bright moment was the origin of one of the most famous lines in American seafaring. "Don't give up the ship. Fight till she sinks." These were some of the last words uttered by U.S. Captain James Lawrence, who died while unsuccessfully There's like a fire truck or something going by. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it on whenever I post this, but I'm just going to wait until it passes. All right. "Don't give up the ship. Fight till she sinks." These were some of the last words uttered by U.S. Captain James Lawrence, who died while unsuccessfully attempting to defend his ship, the Chesapeake, against the enemy vessel, the Shannon, under Captain Philip Broke. This phrase later became directly associated with the United States Navy, victory and perseverance. On August 19th, 1812, a U.S. frigate defied the British Navy, receiving timeless, irrepressible reverence from the American people in the aftermath. After narrowly escaping from a British squadron in a heroic multi-day chase off the Atlantic coast in July, the United States frigate Constitution defeats the British frigate Guerriere? I don't know how that's pronounced. Guerriere? I'm just gonna call it Guerriere for now, because British cannonballs appeared to bounce off the sides of the American ship. The Constitution earns the nickname Old Ironsides. With 4 successful cruises, Constitution becomes the most famous American ship of the War of 1812. The War of 1812 concluded 3 years after it began with the Treaty of Ghent, laying out terms of peace between America and Britain. However, because of the length of time it took to sail from Belgium, Ghent is the capital of Belgium, or at least was at that period of time. I'm interrupting my own reading here, because I don't think that's correct. I think it's Brussels. I'm pretty sure Brussels is the capital of Belgium at present, but I guess Ghent was at one point of time. Ghent is a city in Belgium, though. Alright, anyways, back to my paper reading. I'll just start over from when I interrupted. Ghent is the capital of Belgium, which is not. To America, what has been known as perhaps the most memorable and acclaimed U.S. victory of the war, the Battle of New Orleans, was able to occur. Fought 2 weeks after the war ended, this battle pitted 200 Muskogee Native American soldiers and 5,000 American soldiers against 10,000 British soldiers, as the latter sought to control the city. Commanding the Americans was the future 7th President of the U.S., and recipient of the nickname Old Hickory, Andrew Jackson, who inspired his men through acts of courage and valor while defending New Orleans against British against British. I guess that's a typo there, but hang on. Also, another fire truck just went by. Let me go back to reading. Edward Pakenham, who was the brother-in-law of the Duke of Wellington, a British hero in the fight against Napoleon in Europe. One source describes the battle thus: sharpshooting militiamen using Kentucky long rifles, accurate at hundreds of yards, took their toll, but the British ranks were broken by the Louisiana artillerymen. Pakenham himself was shot several times and died on the field, alongside more than 2,000 British casualties. dramatically contrasting the 21 Americans killed. Adding insult to injury, or death in this case, the deceased Pakenham suffered the indignity of having his body stuffed into a cask of rum for preservation en route to England. Although they were surrounded by seemingly impossible odds and relentless British adversaries, like in the case of the U.S. Constitution and the Battle of Baltimore, and even struck down, evidenced by the Battle of Bladensburg and subsequent burning of Washington, D.C., the United States of America rose up from the brink of disaster to take on Britain, shown through the Battle of New Orleans. America's exploits during the war showed that they were able to cut down and repel Britain, gaining them new global standing after the War of 1812. And that is all I've got, and that is the end of the paper. Yeah. I guess I could like rank these, but I don't know if it'd be, I guess, like worth ranking them. Maybe I'll do another video where I rank them based on how well I think they're written now and how I guess historically accurate they are. But thanks for listening. Oh, it didn't end. Hang on. Okay, thanks for listening.